Hey, it's E.B. Moss, and this is the Advancing Diversity podcast from MediaVillage, the home of thought leadership for the media, marketing, and advertising community. Today, it's more important than ever that the content that you see, read, or hear reflects the faces of the real world, created by and about those of any persuasion, race, or religion. So join us today as we talk to those who are really moving the needle from advocacy to activism in upping the diversity and inclusion of our industry. Hey, it's E.B. Moss for Advancing Diversity and MediaVillage. This is a pretty great opportunity because I happen to be gathered in a room with all of the MediaVillage contributors, of which I am one now, and we got into a conversation about the issues and concerns in the media and marketing and advertising industry around diversity and inclusion. So I was sitting there with the very esteemed author and journalist and contributor Michael Farmer, who is the author of Madison Avenue Manslaughter, and another esteemed contributor, journalist, and ad agency owner, Peter Hubbell, the owner of Boomagers, and also one of our columnists. And I said, you know what? We've got to commemorate this. We're going to put this into an episode of Advancing Diversity. So very spontaneously, Michael Farmer is going to grill Peter Hubbell and have a little discussion about the issues in our industry, particularly around aging. Michael?
Thank you, E.B. Peter, it's great to see you again. Many years ago, we worked together when you were at Saatchi & Saatchi, and I was a consultant helping Saatchi understand its staffing and fees across its clients. And the issue of diversity came up during that work because, as I remember from the work I did, the continued pressure on agency fees has led agencies to downsize their staffs because they have to make holding company margins, and to juniorize their staffs at the same time. So they were both cutting the average salaries and the number of people, despite the fact that the work has been growing with the advent of digital and social advertising. So what I'm curious about, since you're in this space, is how the juniorization of ad agency staffs has affected the way they think about client problems, the growth opportunities, and the positioning of brands. I have some thoughts about it, but you're the expert. What could you tell me is going on?
Great. Good to see you again, Mike, as always. I think just maybe I'll spend 30 seconds or so describing a little bit more about Boomagers, because I think the creation story is very relevant to the conversation we're having. I was at Saatchi & Saatchi running one of their top 3 global businesses for them, great position and so forth. But when you're in the creative business, you're inherently always dissatisfied with the status quo. And I realized that when the media business was simple, the advertising business was simple. And now that technology has fragmented media, part of what you've written about, part of the destruction of our industry has to do with the fragmentation that has happened to agencies popping up to service smaller and smaller pieces of connectivity and tactics. And all of my training was always that the consumer mattered most. It didn't matter if you had all the best tactics in the world and you were executing them efficiently. You had to be effective because you had to understand what the right message was to motivate them at the right place and the right time. And so if the consumer is important, and we are living in a day and age of increased specialization in our industry, I said, what would it be like if I reinvented myself to be a specialist in some type of consumer? Because we have the precedent of African American agencies and Hispanic and LGBT, significant sub-industries within the industry. I looked at global aging and I was gobsmacked to discover that nobody in our industry wanted anything to do with aging people. So I started Boomagers 9 years ago. We're now offices in 3 different continents, and our work is running in 19 countries. So we filled an important need space for clients, i.e. understanding and marketing to people of age. Now, what's interesting about that is when I got into the business, back in the 1980s, it was all about the agencies that were doing the best work were the agencies that understood the people for whom they were creating work. So you had research departments and insights, and all of that was really, really important. So the complexion of the staff you had at the agency had to mirror the complexion of the audience the client was asking you to deliver work for. So if that meant we needed to have ethnic and racial diversity or gender diversity, that's what we had, okay? But for the most part, the age of the agency was what it was. And what you have going on now, to your point, Michael, is that the ad agencies are juniorizing because of the pressure on fees and the fact that people who are more experienced fundamentally cost more because they're more senior. They're juniorizing at a time that the world is aging. So we're moving diametrically in opposite directions of being able to understand the increasing number of people in the world who are aging. So right here in the United States, there's a phenomenon called the longevity economy, which is the economic output associated with people who are 50 and older. There are 106 million people who are 50 and older. Last time I looked, most people were interested in chasing millennials and so on and so forth, but there's 106 million people who are 50 or older, and they are generating $7.1 trillion a year in economic output. Let's compare that to, on a GDP basis to other countries in the world. That 7.1 trillion is greater than any other country's total economy, with the exception of China, and it's larger than the total economies of Brazil, Russia, and India combined. And what are we doing? Not only are we ignoring that cohort, but the agency industry that you're an expert on, Michael, is down aging at a point in time when the world's population is up aging.
So we've got the kids ignoring the old folks. Now, I'm a baby boomer.
Nothing new to that, right?
I'm a baby boomer, so I have some biases in this direction. But I do know that the people that I went to university with and I went to business school with, who are of a certain age, over 50 today, have gobs of money to spend, and they're spending it.
Yeah.
They're spending it on holidays. They're spending it on education for their grandkids. They're spending it on automobiles. They're spending it on consumer goods, just like we all spend it, after the war.
Yeah, for sure. And we could go on and on with time we don't have in this podcast to bring data to that. But yes, the overwhelming amount, 70% of disposable income in the United States is held by baby boomers. They're dominating 50% of the CPG categories, et cetera. But the clients that come to us, and again, this is great. This is why we built Boom Majors, because we knew that the young clients would lack experience in having lived the lives of baby boomers through no fault of their own. They're young, that's good. But also from an experience and consumer understanding, we knew that they wouldn't be prioritizing them. So we get questions like, well, do older men still shave? Or do they brush their teeth? Or do they care about their hair? And so there really are these incredible biases and blindness, if you will, to what people are experiencing at age. I've written 2 books. The first was called The Old Rush, which should be obvious in its title as to what that focused on. I evangelized for the white space that is marketing to age. But the second book was called Getting Better with Age, and it was based on this belief that the baby boomers believe they're getting better with age, and if that's what they believe, then we as marketers need to get better at the way we market to age. And so there's a whole opportunity there, but then there's also, we're here to talk about diversity, inclusion, and ageism, and I think it's terrific to see from my industry. The 2 greatest showcases that we have each year are the Cannes Lion Festival in southern France and the Super Bowl. And when you go to those events and participate in those events, as I do, it's remarkable to see the progress we've made, not only in inclusion, but in having work that's created with more of a social purpose in mind. And as I published last time I was at Con, I will publish it again this June, as often as I can to evangelize. For all of the progress that has been made on inclusion, we are still excluding people of age. I hesitate to use the term ageism because I think it's a term that's rife with conflict and tension, and that's not what I'm about. But I have said to the leaders of the blue chip client organizations that we work with who are committed to the emerging social opportunities, I have said we need to figure out how we as a media and marketing and entertainment industry can envision an age-agnostic future. Right? Age should not matter, yet it does. So it's its own bias. We'll need to change it. I'm only one person, but I believe with the influence that we have in the media and marketing field, with the types of clients we work with, that we can at least get our industry moving in that direction.
Well, it will take a different type of leadership, will it not, in some of the professional service firms that deal with clients on this issue. It seems to me that the agency CEOs, as an example, ought to recognize the economic figures that you're so fluent with and recognize that they have not put together a staff that is capable of serving clients in all the dimensions that they need to be served. So how do you think the leadership of the agencies can be influenced to change the age profile of their own staff?
Well, Lord knows I've been trying for 10 or more years with boom agers, and it's the question I get asked most often, which is, it seems like such an obvious opportunity with the demographic trends, the amount of wealth and spending propensity, the amount of brand loyalty. And we can have a whole other conversation about, well, what are brands in the mind of a millennial versus baby boomers, right? As we get into a universe that's more and more about e-commerce and transparency around pricing and so forth, I think we're going to see a renaissance of brands, that brands become very important in a transparent retail environment. But the question I get asked is, why aren't we seeing more progress with all of that? And it comes down to, there's a threefold answer, but I'm going to focus on just this one point, which is there is still a deep-seated bias in our industry to believe that a younger consumer is more valuable than an older consumer. Because a younger consumer, the belief is if you can win a young man when he shaves for the first time, then he'll shave with your razor for the rest of his life. And baby boomers, their years of power consumption are over, and they're 1 foot in the grave, and so there's no long tail of future potential in trying to recruit them and generating trial and loyalty. And to that I say, there's a massive assumption in there that loyalty is still a valid and enduring philosophy. And I don't, based on what I said a moment ago about how the retail and e-tail landscape has changed, I don't know about the two of you, but I go on and I look for the free shipping and I look for the best price I can find. And if I'm looking for a circular saw and it's a Black & Decker versus a DeWalt, probably doesn't matter. So the loyalty is a challenging thing. I think the belief that a young consumer is more valuable is troubling. And I'll just give you a little anecdotal story. I was asked, as I often am, to participate in panels that debate the merits of millennials or baby boomers, which is better, which is more important. And I was at the International Auto Show with a group of luxury automobile marketers, because of course the issue is it's a higher priced car. We know that millennials are financially challenged, baby boomers have the money, let's talk about that. And everybody was saying all the right answers, but nobody was making a choice. And I finally said, okay, let's make a choice, one or the other. Which generation would you prioritize? And I will not mention the brand, but a very prominent luxury car brand CMO said, I would choose a millennial. And when I said, okay, great, let's talk about that. Why? And she said, because I don't want to sell a baby boomer their last car. And the air escaped from the room. But that's what we're up against, and I think that that's entrenched. I don't know that today's agency leaders who are preoccupied with tactics and creativity, whether they're really thinking about this. I can tell you though that the smart marketers out there realize that demographics are the starting point. And if this segment of the population is growing and the others aren't, well, then you ought to be fishing where there's growth.
Yeah, I mean, it could well be that this CMO is never going to sell the first car to a millennial who's going to be ordering Uber in any case.
Correct. Yeah, here we go.
So I'm curious about the loyalty dimension, but of course the baby boomers grew up when there was product scarcity after the Second World War, and except for a couple energy crises, there was 40 years of growth, and with it, television advertising, which created an enormous amount of brand loyalty. If your mom bought Tide, you were going to buy Tide. Mm-hmm. The millennials have grown up in an environment where the number of SKUs in a supermarket has probably increased 50-fold. And so do you think, I mean, and you know a lot about the boomers, but in looking at the millennials, that there is a fundamentally different attitude about loyalty with the younger generation that is part of this equation?
Yeah, we love to say as an industry that loyalty is dead because that's provocative and it makes for good content and so forth. And I think that as you look at loyalty, as you look at brands in the context of millennials, I don't think that we can judge this until the millennials really come into their own. I mean, majority of millennials are still 5 to 15 years away from their peak earning and spending periods. The majority of them have not yet moved from a sharing to an ownership type of economy situation. They haven't gotten married, settled down, and again, I'm talking averages here. And so they've yet to enter that mainstream of their lives where they start to become, parents and so on and so forth. So I think that the continued maturation of millennials will give us some more insight there. But I think that I do think that loyalty is certainly not what it used to be. I wrote in one of my books about blue jeans, right? The baby boomers put blue jeans on the map. It was a proletariat uniform of youthful rebellion when James Dean wore dungarees, right? This is the baby boomers' way of saying we're not going to conform, and so we want to go to church and go to work and wear this proletariat uniform of rebellion. And so, my good buddy, a former P&G client, Chip Berg, is the CEO of Levi's now. He's been doing a fabulous job. But I said to Chip, I've stopped wearing Levi's after all these years because you've written me out of the script. And not only have you written me as a baby boomer out of the script, but you've sort of rubbed my nose in the fact that your values have changed. They were running ads at the time of tattooed young people making out in the back of a car with jeans with holes in them and dirty shirts and so forth. And I just said, it's clear that you've made a choice. That choice doesn't include me. So watch what just happened to 45 years of loyalty, right? I wear Carhartt jeans now. They're $29. It's a good product. It comes from the same proletariat working class origin that Levi's and dungarees originally came from. So I just think everybody is going to challenge loyalty in their own way, but I think the point I'm making there, and let's bring it back full circle to ageism, the baby boomers are the savviest consumers in marketing because they've been on the receiving end of more marketing communications throughout their lifetimes by virtue of their age. They are not, you're not going to blow it by them with a fastball. You have to be authentic. You have to be honest. They realize that they've aged out of the prime spot of marketing, which they were always in, felt good when they were in it, choice of a new generation, Pepsi versus Coke, etc. But you have to be careful because if you as a brand make a choice that's so deliberate and so offensive, you are being ageist in a way because you are being exclusionary. And so the conversations we like to have are the conversations about how we can create multi-generational messaging, right? Storytelling that's based on enduring values that are shared over time and across generations are always going to resonate. So it doesn't have to be this either or. There are ways to be inclusive. You can show people with gray hair and not risk that your young girls aren't going to want to buy your shampoo, You know, we saw this week about all the celebrities in People magazine, including Jane Fonda and Ted Danson, both genders, celebrating their gray hair. Well, you know, we're making progress, but for all the progress we're making, there still have inertia that's holding us back, and that's been the commentary on diversity and inclusiveness from day one.
Well, Peter, I'm sure that Boo Majors is going to thrive for the very reasons that you've described, that the baby boomers are still a very viable and huge segment with a lot of spending power. The agencies that I'm familiar with don't seem to be very interested in having the types of staffs or the ideas that will market to that, and I'm sure that you will do everything that you can to dominate that segment.
Thank you, Michael. We're an agency with a purpose, and we believe that we can and should and will bring dignity and respect to aging, as all the other great cultures in our world do, and we've got some wind in our sails.
Well, I think that was an amazing conversation, probably the easiest quote-unquote interview I've ever done, and what a testament to the fact that these are two of the biggest pros I've ever met. Michael Farmer, Peter Hubbell. You guys could have gone on, but we'll stop there, and thank you so much for participating in the Advancing Diversity podcast. I'm E.B. Moss. Thanks very much for listening to the Advancing Diversity podcast. It's been incredibly exciting to talk about those who are really moving the needle from advocacy to activism and bringing our industry together around diversity and inclusion. I hope that you'll share this episode and tell everyone to subscribe so we can all advance diversity. With appreciation from MediaVillage, I'm E.B. Moss.